There is an old adage which states it ain't stealing if it's already stolen. Is that true? Cinematic class is about to begin, and your professor is in. Greetings, salutations, and other sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and a purveyor of truth in movies. Folks, have you ever heard of the multiverse? Well, if you're a comic fan, you probably have. I mean, it pretty much dominates both the DC universe and the Marvel universe, as well as a lot of the independents. The concept, if I can get this straight, is that let's say you come to a point in your life where you need to make a decision, whether that's the job to pick, whether that's, to propose to your lady or not, whether it's, to stay where you're at or move somewhere. Decisions need to be made. And every time you make that decision, you go down a certain path. Well, the concept behind the multiverse is that in other parallel universes, you've made different decisions than the one you made. And those other universes exist with those other decisions being made. When you think about that, it's a little bit mind-boggling, and you go, wow, Wonder what would happen if we could tap into one of those alternate universes, one of those parallel universes, and find out if our life was drastically changed or not. Well, that's the entire theory behind a brand new sci-fi thriller called Expulsion. It does indeed involve two rogue scientists who managed to find a way to tap into that multiverse. And as the old saying goes, the grass is not always greener on the other side. Here's a look at Expulsion.
If we stabilize it, can you grab it down this? Manual energy flow. Coordinates?
Locked, 4.994% ordinary matter.
Energy level?
77 tera electron volts.
Let's make history.
How late were you and Vince up last night?
I think we did it.
You really did it.
Pulling a crossover.
I don't think we should.
We gotta find a sustainable power source that can keep this thing open longer. You sure this is Lennon's place?
I bet the Lennon at work today is like a double from the other side.
Don't let that door close behind you. This is overwhelming. Yeah, I've heard that before. Have you ever crossed over? No. Vince, hey, call me back when you get this, all right? We need to chat.
There's a gazillion possibilities. We just happened to dial into the one that could have our damn doppelgangers?
They want to use it to connect everything. But not just two worlds, Scott. All of them.
Can he protect you?
Scott, she needs an ambulance now. Know what she needs is salvation.
What the hell is going on, Scott?
Will you give us what we ask?
Why are you here? Why are any of us here, Scott?
So is that your plan? You want to just get away and play house?
Yes. Brave words. For a dead man.
Someone's in a mood.
I am. Don't you love me? Look at Scott. Who will the universe expel? Look at me!
So if that looks rather interesting to you, then you understand why it looked very interesting to me, and I needed to talk to somebody involved with that movie, so I was lucky enough to tackle Sean C. Stevens. He is the director of Expulsion. Not only was I able to snag him down for an interview, but I should point out that he won New Director of the Year for the GFA Awards, which is pretty good. And his star in the movie, who is Colton Tapp, also won a GFA nomination for Best Actor. So the movie garnered more attention than just My Little Eye. I had the opportunity to talk with Sean. This was a most interesting interview, and I present it to you now. Greetings, salutations, and other sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies. You know, there are a lot of movie science fiction tales that talk about a multiverse. Layers and layers and layers of, different universes that coexist with ours. Sometimes I'd like to visit some of those other ones, and that is the premise behind a new sci-fi thriller called Expulsion, and I am happy to have with me the director of Expulsion. Would you please welcome to the show, Sean C. Sean, welcome to the show. Appreciate you being here.
Hello.
Now, Sean, I got to ask you right off the bat, brother, does the multiverse really exist, or is it just in these sci-fi movies?
That's obviously up for debate, but I think that for the first time in history, ever since I think it was, 2009 or somewhere in that neighborhood, 2010, where they discovered the Higgs boson particle. And a lot of the physics actually are leaning towards the existence of a multiverse. Now, it may not look like we expect it to look, but the opening quote in the movie, for example, is a real quote from Stephen Hawking. In his last published paper, it was published post-mortem, and it says that we're not down to one unique universe. And currently, actually, at CERN, where the Large Hadron Collider is set up, it's about a 17-mile. I realize in the movie they've scaled it down to 50 feet, but it's actually they're doing some work actually right now that they're going to publish Q1 next year. About looking for actual proof of different universes. So, kind of the perspective I take is maybe all that dark matter and dark tea are just bubbles of other universes bumping into us. So there is some real science behind it, although certainly I'm not a physicist, I can't say for sure, but that is what inspired us, for most certainly, is the fact that science, it could be real.
Yeah, your bio stuff said that you guys were kind of geeking out on some of this physics stuff. So I can see now that it's true, and so do the viewers as well. Let's shift you back into reality and Earth here. Now, we were talking a little bit before we actually started recording, and you are currently in Phoenix, Arizona, my
Correct.
Second city of choice. And you made this film totally in Arizona. So I've got to, obviously you're from there, but I've got to ask, why would you make this movie in Arizona when there are many other states that have much better tax benefits for filmmakers?
Yeah, I think, and that is very true. I actually ran the tax rebate program back when Michigan had theirs, for example, on a film that we did in 2012, 2013, known as Rumors of Wars. It's a larger budget than this one, so I do realize those benefits. And certainly there was a need to fly in some of our actors from out of state, whereas obviously, we could have probably found local talent that was up to the challenge, perhaps, if we were in some of the hotbeds like Georgia, for example, Louisiana. But we actually did it here just because this is where we reside, where we live. In terms of getting the set set up, it took a lot of, it's a lower budget film. So having to set those things up and, to leave them without having to leave them for long periods of time and have to pay for something that's not being used. It actually made more sense for us to under the circumstances, to actually shoot it here, where we could have more control and not have to travel as much and all that fun stuff.
I'm kind of glad you brought up the budget, because one of the things I noted in my review was that Expulsion seems to be, to me, a movie that is just screaming for a higher budget. I mean, a lot of the sets were in a basement and a garage and stuff, and I'm thinking, man, if they had the budget, they could have blown this thing out of the water. Is Expulsion now just the way it's going to be, or is there any hope that maybe a bigger studio or a bigger budget might come along and you might redo this thing?
Yeah, we actually that certainly is potentially in the cards. a lot of the things that I've read and some of the reviews I've read, and I admittedly haven't read yours yet, but I've read a few other ones. And the story and the complexity and sort of the aha moments are things that would remain intact and could be pulled off much better with a larger budget, obviously. So we are certainly open to that. One of the beautiful things, and I know we're going to get into colossal content later, but we actually control all the rights still. So we didn't have to relinquish any rights to any territory or to any film distributor, which is going to make it potentially easier for us to either do a sequel or do a remake or something along those lines. We also have other things that we're working on. We sold a screenplay that was optioned that we now have back, which is really it plays on the cryonics piece of it. We actually went and visited with the folks here at Elkhorn and Scottsdale about folks that freeze themselves. You probably heard of the Ted Williams stuff.
Yeah.
Well, all that's real. So again, we're basing it on a fringe science, and that's one that we're really excited about. But again, that takes a larger budget. And we've actually had some higher ups in Hollywood read that, and they love that script as well. So we're excited to have that one back. But again, remaking this one is something that is certainly in the cards. I think it's definitely primed, as you put it. There's a lot we could do with a bigger budget, most certainly.
Yeah, there is.
Absolutely.
Let's stay in Arizona a little bit here, Sean, if we can. I want to ask how this happened, because you went to Arizona State University, a very noble school, but you majored in psychology. So how in the world did you get from psychology over into filmmaking?
Very good question. I actually took the long path. So what I mean by that is I started off and knocked out my first 2 years pretty quickly. And then what I did is I slowed it down and I took every elective film theory course they possibly had. And I can't speak to today, but I know back in those days, ASU didn't really have a hands-on film department. So I hit up several of the local community colleges and art schools around town and got all my hands-on experience there. So I feel like the psychology piece helps me to play into the writing aspect of it, understanding how the payoff of a story, those, again, as I put it earlier, those aha moments, if you can get a bunch of those to sort of culminate at one point in the movie, at the climax, or even a little bit after, it really brings the audience in. So I think that's kind of found its way in there. And then also with directing, it's that positive reinforcement piece. It's letting people know you do well and really making things stick. So I think it bleeds together a little bit, but the hands-on experience that I got really came from sort of all my electives, and then also came from some of the early work I did on some bigger productions.
That psychology degree might help when you try to wheel and deal some of these studio execs.
Yes.
Also, that can help
Very
out
true.
a little bit there. Hey, I want to ask you, sorry, I deviate here a little bit from for my viewers here, but they kind of know, my regular fans, that I get kind of a technical, I like a techno geek type thing. And I noticed at the end of your end credits that you were using a system called Blackmagic.
Yes.
Okay, yep. I'm going to say right up front, I'm not a fan. Okay, I played with Blackmagic, admittedly, many years ago, and I understand that the company has made some really great strides since the last time I had my hands on that gear. But I figured, since I mentioned it in my review that they use Blackmagic, I figured this is your great opportunity here to explain why Blackmagic came into it and what you like about that system.
Yeah, so we actually used all the Adobe Creative Suite for the actual editing. So we really just used Blackmagic for the capture, and then we used a Canon and some other array of lenses. And then we did do a little bit of the color grading for certain shots in Dissolve, where Adobe's tools at the time, at least, couldn't quite cut it. And then for some of the visual effects, our visual effects artist used, Nuke and some of the higher end programs that he has access to. But in terms of, I think what initially attracted us to it was the lower cost, obviously, of the camera itself, to get a raw. We actually shot this in raw 4K, so we didn't
Wow.
compress anything, and we actually have a raw master, which is why we're excited when Apple TV was enabling us to actually put it out in 4K. And right now, although you can pick up the copy of the movie starting today on Google, on Amazon, Apple's where you would go if you want to watch the 4K version. But that being said, it was a beast to edit because 4K files are huge. I think we took up something like 22 terabytes of space to get to get the movie stored, and then we had to back that up, of course. So that was So I think what I'm getting at is, and then the camera itself is really just a brain, doesn't even have a lens. So we had to buy a rig and get all, have our DP bring in some of his stuff. And ultimately I would venture to say it probably really didn't save us much money than getting like one of the lower end Red cameras or something because of all the different accessories that we had to buy. But the color palette on the camera itself, and that's what I'm hearing, even as you sort of go up the chain with their cameras and the ability to shoot raw for the cost that they provide, at least on the surface, looks like a great deal. But again, you got to buy so many of those bells and whistles to make it actually work. But I think it was the price tag and having used that camera a little bit for some of the promotional stuff we've shot that allowed us to go in there and do it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, bringing in a bigger rig, that already came with a lot of those things already built in, probably wouldn't have been much more, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But definitely it was the cost in terms of the hardware up front.
I appreciate you saying that. I like to get off on the technical side of things every now and then and explore those. You mentioned your director of photography. We should probably mention him. That's Chad Dooley, who was your director of photography. And I want to say that this movie, Expulsion, is really garnering a bit of momentum for you. One of your stars in the movie, Colton Tapp, who actually has a dual role, was nominated for a Best Actor award, and you, sir, won Best New Director award for the GFA Awards. And the GFA has a mantra or a stigma, if you will, of being geared toward movies that push multiculturalism. How did Expulsion do that for you? How did you gain their judges' eyes with that?
Yeah, to be honest with you, when we submitted the movie, I had some conversations with them, but it was definitely a surprise. I think that, if you dig into our crew, there is a ton of diversity there. I know that it doesn't necessarily show up on screen, and it almost did. This isn't necessarily why, the GFA didn't know this, but we actually, to kind of give you an idea of the creativity, there was one point where a gentleman by the name of Titus, he's a fantastic actor here, the same person, and never addressed the fact that they look very different, and just have the audience pick up on that. That was actually one of our ideas that we almost ran with. I think from a cultural standpoint, to answer your question a little bit more directly, there's a lot in this movie that would appeal to the Asian marketplace in terms of parallel universes, technology. Yes. And I think the way that we embraced that was something that they absolutely noticed.
Very good. I got to mention this because I want to bring in your cohort in crime here, and that would be Aaron Jackson.
Yes.
Or as Key and Peele would say, Aaron Jackson. So we bring in Aaron Jackson, and he kind of co-directed this movie with you and was involved. So I've got to ask you, did you guys get along on the set real well, or were there some contentious moments?
Yeah, so Aaron and I have worked together since around 1997, 98. We've always been writing partners. Our other partner, Paul Tomborello, actually directed him in our student film back in the day. So back when everybody else was making these shorts first class, we actually made a feature, which actually is available, very low budget, but it was about a geneticist and what have you. But anyway, that's how I met him. and we've continued to write together and collaborate. When we actually got to the point of shooting, we knew that we would have to move fast and there wouldn't be a lot of time. So we made sure that we really got on board and made all the big decisions up front and were in agreement. There was obviously some compromising back and forth, but primarily it went very smoothly because we were able to do that. So I was more on the technical side. A lot of the blocking was very important whenever you're using the same actor in two roles. Yes. Some visual effects supervision. And then I would obviously work with the actors as well, especially when Aaron was on screen, because he also acts in the movie. He's sort of the supporting cast member here, Colton, or the character Scott's best friend. But yeah, so there was definitely a lot of pre-planning and trying to anticipate some of those ideas and things that might pop up on screen. But ultimately, when it came down to it, because I also had the producing hat on as well, Paul Tamburello and myself, you know, we'd have to make some executive decisions, for lack of a better term, sometimes. So, and I apologize if you can hear my dogs. I'm at home, obviously. So
that's okay.
Yeah, but you know, but ultimately, Aaron and I worked very well together, and we made had a lot of conversations, a lot of rewrites on the script, a lot of decisions that were made, dialogue tweaks. All of that was done well in advance. Even the blocking was mapped out, you know, graphically and everything ahead of time. So,
very good. Now, you know what you mentioned in that conversation several times. You mentioned Paul Tamburello, and let's bring him into this now, because he and you have combined to make a company called Colossal Content. Okay, why don't you explain to us a little bit about what Colossal Content is? Because I understand you have 2 or 3 projects already at work in there.
Absolutely. Yep, we're working on finishing up Werewolf World right now, and then we have a couple more that we're looking to acquire. But basically what it is Paul and I have been in the business for a long time. So we did $3 million plus budgets. So again, that's not considered a big budget in Hollywood, as you know, but
right,
still a decent sized budget, 3 in a row, and we were able to get them distributed and everything. But we learned a lot through that process. And then as we started going out and seeking distribution and meeting with individuals for expulsion, a lot of those realizations came back to the forefront. And that is, there's an old saying in Hollywood, I'm not going to use profanity, but I'll just say that filmmakers get effed and distributors do the effing. And you can appreciate that based on your reviews, but it is true. So we decided, you know what, we have some contacts at Apple, we have some contacts at Amazon, and we have some people even through Google. So why don't we leverage that? Why don't we create something that's more friendly for the filmmaker? We actually have partnered up with a PR firm. In the world of film distribution, and the way that it typically works is you have a distributor buy the movie outright, and all the costs you incur very rarely, if ever, catch up, or any money makes it back into the filmmaker's pocket, right? And then if you go on the self-distribution side, then you're distributing that you can get someone to put your movie up for you, pay them a flat fee, but then there's no marketing involved. You know, like nobody knows the movie's coming out because they don't do any marketing. So like, why don't we partner with this PR firm? Why don't we create a way, leverage the knowledge that we have and create a better way for filmmakers to distribute their movies through Colossal, and get the marketing piece built in there as well. Make it so it's easy to recoup, you know, at least some of their budget back, and then potentially waterfall down to the leaves in the past, taking what works and what doesn't work, filmmaker and buy. We're going to be launching that. We're actually having the website developed. We have a meeting this week, end of November. But we also have a couple of larger movies that have already we already have acquired or are working on acquiring to sort of get those out there as well. So we're excited about that, and obviously some of the profits that we make, hopefully from that, will enable us to make more films and not have to rely so much on the investor piece, which is always a plus as well.
You know, I love werewolf movies, so we'll have to stay in touch over your next. Didn't you say it was Werewolf World? Yeah, we're gonna have to stay in touch on that because
Yeah, Werewolf. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have our other arm, Colossal Pictures, and Colossal Pictures is really just production, right? And Colossal Content's going to be our distribution arm.
Gotcha. You know, Sean, I got to say that you know, as we're taping this this interview, Expulsion comes out today. Now, people will be watching this naturally afterward, but just one more time, let them know where they can see this movie and how they can get their hands on it.
Yep, absolutely. So we have physical media is available on Amazon. There's a Blu-ray up with a lot of special features. There's even a short 40-minute documentary that our DP directed, Chad Dooley, about Aaron Jackson. Aaron is an avid moviegoer, and he was getting close to having tracked every movie that he's ever seen to 10,000 movies. So you can watch his journey as he approaches that mark. Kind of a fun little documentary available on the Blu-ray and available on the DVD, which you can get on Amazon. And then additionally, the film just dropped today on Google Play. It also dropped on Apple TV, and it also dropped on Amazon streaming on demand. So for just a few bucks, folks can go out there and rent the film and watch to their heart's content. And if they enjoy it, they can even pay just a little bit more to purchase it and own it forever.
There you go. And I'll repeat again that this is a story. The storyline, the script itself is really what impressed me the most about the movie. It's really good. And for those of you that enjoy science fiction to the max, this one will tease your head a little bit, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. And I think it's worthwhile.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, thanks a lot for taking the time out of your busy schedule and talking with us. Right now, I wish I was down there in Phoenix with you because it's starting to get cold back out there in the East.
Okay. Yeah.
But I wish you an awful lot of luck with Expulsion. It does come out today. It is available. And of course, with all your future endeavors as well, now that you have learned what you have learned.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Here ended your lesson.
I appreciate you certainly having me on your show today as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate you saying that.
Say once again, I certainly want to say thank you to Sean C. Stevens for swinging by the cameras there and letting us do a nice little interview with him. You know, I have said repeatedly on this show and in numerous reviews as well that the script is all important. Don't even bother making your movie if you don't have the words. And I have to tell you that the story behind Expulsion is what really attracted me. It's a good tale. It really is. And you could see where this could very easily be a franchise, you know, with continuing sagas going down the road. The one thing, though, and I even mentioned this to Sean when we were talking, is that this movie screams for a bigger budget. The story is there, but you could see they didn't have the budget to give it the real that it needed. And boy, you know, if this one could be remade by a major studio with a lot bigger budget, I think you'd have a real keeper here. I had already mentioned Colton Tapp in this. Director of photography is Chad Dooley, and I do want to point out that this was shot entirely in Arizona, inside the Phoenix area. And boy, you know, I like that place an awful lot. So it was good to see some of the old town again in Phoenix, Arizona. All the best to Sean Stevens and his movie Expulsion. It is currently now available on all of your home streaming devices, VOD, and of course home video as well. I think you'll agree with me. Really good story. Just wish these guys would have had a bigger budget. It's definitely worth a look. Expulsion. And now that you have learned what you have learned, class is dismissed.